Everybody, welcome back. Welcome to the channel, covering all things Marvel Snap here. Had a good experience in a certain location in a game. I'm still in that early pool 3 gameplay, which is brutal, and had a location that I originally thought was not very playable. And this is maybe for your earlier players. I think some of you more experienced players might already know this, but I'd love to hear from you in the comments below what your experience might be with this location. That location is sBar. So I originally thought this was sort of a waste of a location. Maybe you could drop a couple things on there. So we're going to walk through some cards that you can annoy your opponents, that you can actually use to help you, and also how to win this location. So sort of a location highlight video. This one, sBar. Let's check it out. So first I want to show sBar for anybody who might not know. When you play a card here, it goes back to your hand. So the type of things you want to be thinking about when you're using this is what sort of card can you play on the field that can affect the game. That's the simplest way to put it. Now, the things you're going to see the most are Yondus, Scorpions. Those sort of things are constantly, like the Yondu would just discard your entire hand. It's a super cheap card, and it's just going to take away all of your opponent's cards. Great card. Scorpion, very similar, pretty cheap card, and keeps putting the negative points on your opponent's cards. But there's more cards you could actually play here. So this was the catalyst for me to make this video. This was a game that I actually was in. It was a very, very fun game, and it's that pool 3 sort of early play. Now, if you look at this, I think some experienced players might quickly realize what happened in the game. Some newer players, maybe not so much. So to start the game, I did exactly what I mentioned. You can see my Scorpions currently over on the left-hand side. I used that in the middle, I think, twice. But they actually countered that with Bast. So those original 2, and then they used Bast to clean that up. Bast basically puts all your power at 3, which is actually a really nice counter to Scorpion. But luckily for me, there was still Camouflage there, so I eventually dropped my Scorpion over there and actually still got 2 hits. They also had a negative. So you can see, because like Iron Man, he's got an 8. How did he get an 8? Well, because Mr. Negative flipped. That is one of the cards I'll mention in this review of this location that does work really well for your cards. The next part on this is that I actually played my Jubilee on Camouflage, and this isn't about Camouflage. That by itself is a great location, but it pulled Sif. Now, when it pulled Sif, I happen to have both what I call Octonaut, others call Infinite, and I had Arrow in my hand. So I have Ghost Rider in this particular hand, or this deck, and then I played Ghost Rider to that middle location. And when I did that, that just happened to be at the same turn that they tried to play Mystique on the left-hand side. I think they actually had Angela on that left-hand side as well. So they then, Arrow pulled the Mystique and the Angela to the middle, which was honestly phenomenal for me, because I knew they likely weren't going to be able to play many, if any, cards in that middle location. But the Mystique was copying an Iron Man, so there was some risk there, especially with the Angela. And then obviously having the Octonaut in the middle there is just a point boost. So that helped me a ton there. And then I just ended up winning the game. They went high points way right. I was fine. I was a little worried on that left-hand side that I might not end up pulling it out, but luckily I did, and ended up winning the game. But anyway, this is sort of a weird view in my mind of what sBar art could look like, because it was paired up with Camouflage. But this was the fun game that I played. I wish I had it recorded when I was doing it, because it was super cool. So anyway, I'm going to walk through some of the additional cards and plays that you can do at this location. The first sets of cards that you're going to want to look at here are what I'll call point energy power changers. These are things like Okoye, just the fact that you could keep pumping up your cards a bit. Scorpion, we already mentioned. Iceman's another good one, where you're increasing the cost of your enemy's cards. Ironheart is another one where you're going to keep giving points to your cards there. It's not super expensive, so you can just keep dropping it. I mean, it'd be great if you got this with a Mr. Negative and it came and it was a 0. Like, you could just keep using that the last couple turns. That'd be epic if you got that to fall. Nakia, if you're playing her, she just, again, similar to Ironheart, keep giving your other points cards, but it's only the ones in your hand. I like Ironheart better than Nakia in this situation. Silver Surfer, obviously, even after the nerf, you could just keep dropping that. If you have a bunch of 3 cards out there, just keep pumping those up. Not crazy expensive. And it'd be even better if you got that one flipped as well. I already mentioned Mr. Negative. If you drop that in there, it's going to flip everything. I still, I'll have to figure out the negative decks. I just, only getting that for your last 2 cards. I'm a little hesitant in mentioning this one. And honestly, I want to say this, that I do mention some 4 cards throughout this conversation, 4 power or 4 energy cost cards. If you're ever going to think about using these, you really got to be smart about what you're playing in the following turns, because the whole point of playing it and getting it back is so that you could play it again. And at 4, that means you'd be playing it on turn 5 or 6 again. And if you're, you need zeros basically in your card, or something that's almost a free cost or really low cost and a high power in those next turns to be able to pair that up with. So while it'd be fun to play with, you got to think that one through a bit. The next type of cards you could use, the card pullers. What I mean is you get additional cards in your deck, in your hand, etc. Sometimes this is nice for building up your hands, whether it be for a MODOK complete crush along with your Morbius, or maybe a Dracula or a Hela or something along those lines, or your Devil Dinosaur for those who are probably the ones I'm talking to here with your earlier gameplay, because Devil Dinosaur is phenomenal that early. For some reason, this website shows that some of the cards doubled up. Anyway, ignore that. So you can see some Agent 13, Korg, I guess if you just want to keep adding rocks to your opponent's hand. It is cheap, so it's an option. Squirrel Girl. Now, I will get into how you win this location. If you're looking for that, just stay tuned. I wouldn't play Squirrel Girl here. I would probably play Squirrel Girl in another location. The hood I do like. You get the demon card in your hand and you don't get the -2. That's not so bad. Cable's a good one, pulling from your opponent. Maria Hill, adding another 1 cost card. Sentinel you could do, but I feel like this, since you're already getting the same card back, I'm not sure that's great on doubling that up. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be all that interested in that. Agent Coulson is a good option for getting some random costs, some random 4 and 5 cost cards in your hand. Emma Frost or White Queen. Again, this is a late play card, so you might be careful with this one. The idea, again, like Shuri, are you going to play this again another turn? Maybe if you paired it up with Zabu or double Zabu somewhere, then that could make sense. Nick Fury, that's sort of in that Shuri situation. Like, when are you ever going to be able to play it twice? I guess maybe if you've got an Invisible Woman and somehow we're able to pull MODOK to a spot or something, maybe then, but I get a little hesitant there. One of my favorite cards in the game, Moon Girl. But with all of these card pullers, anything that you're adding to your hand, you do need to be careful with this, because you'll quickly jam up your hand. And if you do that, you won't pull any other cards from your deck. So be wary of that, but it is an option. Another one that I'd say maybe, but I'm not so sure, is Falcon. If for some reason you like to play 1 card somewhere else and then play him, I don't really see this being a smart move, but if you can get creative with something, then maybe. It doesn't reduce any of the costs, so if you need to clean something up or something, maybe you want to think about it, but technically it's an option. I don't think it's a good one. The last one I want to mention here is Shanna, where it'll add a random 1 cost card to each location. I think if you do this with, obviously, Khazar, I think this can be phenomenal, but you got to be ready for a Killmonger. It could literally wipe out your whole everything. So be smart about that. You can't place armors everywhere with destruction to avoid that destruction, but this is technically a decent card to play there, where you can just, at least for a couple turns, you could literally do the last 3 turns and fill up your entire, all locations. Mentioned this earlier, Yondu. This, honestly, is probably your best option. I'm just going to say it right here is Yondu. Super cheap, just totally messing with your opponent. Just bing, 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 taking their cards away every single turn and still being able to play your hand. Another one I like a little bit is actually Black Widow. You just keep, because the next turn they'll have to play their Black Widow, but you keep putting it so they never get additional cards. Somewhat similar to Yondu, but a little bit more cost. The one I think I like the most out of all these, honestly, is Hazmat. But what I will say with this is make sure you pair it with Luke Cage. You should be probably doing that anyway. Luke Cage makes it so your cards don't get affected. But Hazmat just continues to take away from the opponent. And honestly, this is a super cheap card. So is Luke Cage. So to me, I really probably like this one. This pairing, I think I like. I know everybody likes Scorpion and they like Yondu. And I even like that Black Widow play. But man, this, just to continue to do this over and over. Oh man, just to see tink, 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 tink. You can literally play it almost the whole game. Another fun one, debris. Just add rocks to your opponent's hand. Now, again, you're probably only going to do this twice, where it's on turn 3, and then maybe turn 3 or turn 4, and then you're probably done. You're probably only doing that turn 3 and then using it at a different location to drop a rock in there. But if you into the Luke Cage location, but if you do for some reason do that, just know that if they have a way to get that rock some power through Patriot or Khazar or something, and you don't have a way to put anything there, well, I mean, I guess your debris puts something there, but if you don't have a way to increase those points, then they could win that location. Gambit, which we'll talk about the discard stuff in a little bit. You just, again, and you also need to understand it destroys a random card from you too. But if you want to start pinging things off, this can be fun. This one, again, it's sort of messing with your opponent, but I'm not sure how Baron Mordo will really work. And again, this is just filling your opponent's hand a little bit, but you could do it with Baron Mordo and just make it so it's a card they can't really play. I don't know, something to think about. But again, if they have a MODOK and a Hela set up, and for some reason the cards you're giving them are good, I don't know. This might be something you don't really want to risk here. You know, Maximus, he's in that similar vein where they're drawing additional 2 cards. You could actually totally mess yourself up here. Now, the sort of last archetype I want to talk about, the discard archetype. Sif, if you have APOC, you could play Sif turn 3, 4, and 5 if you really want to. Though you'd really just do it 3, 4, and then lay Sif somewhere on turn 5. I think that can be pretty decent. Now, I will say, generally speaking, that the discard archetype, if you've got Lockjaw and discard sets, that's a better play here, even with the location there. But maybe Lockjaw's got a little RNG, whereas Luke's Bar is, you know what card you're playing there. But in general, if you've got low discards, I mean, you could think about stuff like, you know, Blade, who's a low cost, and you could easily just you could continue to drop him on there every turn, even with your Sifs and whatever else is going on. Pull him back and just keep discarding and keep discarding and keep discarding. The one that I probably like the best here, I'd say, is Colleen Wing. I think that with Swarm, that she could be really, really good there, where you just continually... Now, again, you got to be careful because you don't want to fill your hand up too much, but you'll get those swarms down at 0 and just keep multiplying them, and then you could play them in a bunch of different locations. But remember, at some point, having too many cards in your hand is not necessarily a good thing. So all of this discard stuff just leads to Morbius, which is a fantastic card, and the more you can discard, the better this card gets. Now, I will say that, you know, the MODOK, the Lockjaw, the multiple reveals there, maybe with a Wong or something like that, is where you really start seeing this card just sort of go through the roof. So you might, if you want to counter this guy right now, go to Enchantress. That's something that I'll throw out there that you should probably already know anyway. But those are the different cards you want to play to win this location. I already mentioned Squirrel Girl on the different locations. I don't think that's a great play, but it works. Mr. Sinister, which will clone himself and then throw back the original. Again, that's okay. It'll give you 2 points there. But what I really personally like is probably a Jubilee, knowing what you've got in your hand and maybe pulling something down decent, and then the Jubilee gets thrown back. That was what I mentioned in the setup that I had earlier. And the other one is Ghost Rider. I think that if you got a card that you know you discarded, you pull a Ghost Rider in there and it just pulls whatever that card is. I think that's phenomenal. And then obviously, what goes without saying is any movement cards. Anything, Vision, Nightcrawler, Iron Fist paired with something else. It all works with this spot. So anyway, that's your location spotlight with Luke's Bar. I wanted to bring this up. I might do more of these in the future. Like I said, I had a game where it was sort of a catalyst for it, and I wanted to just share. So hopefully this helps out early and end game players. If it does, consider hammering down that like button or subscribing, or you know what, at least maybe share with your aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. Appreciate it. All right, until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.